All right, so good afternoon. If you remember last time, we had finished the discussion on classification of machines. So we said that there were many ways to classify machines, and one of the ways was that you can talk of, depending on the instruction types that are supported, you could talk of a 4 address machine or a 3 address machine, and so on. And we said that you can also classify some machines according to the way you access the operands and results. So we talked of the simplest machines, which were register machines, also called as RISC machines. And you have memory to memory machines on the other extreme, which were very powerful. And you understand that when I say this, what do I mean? So I am referring to the power of the instructions, right? So the kind of work that an instruction can do and so on, right? So that is the idea. That was the idea. And we saw some examples. So if there are any questions on that, I will take it. Otherwise, I now want to talk about one of the aspects of a computer. So this is an organizational aspect, right? So this is an organizational aspect. So I want to first talk about how you can connect memory to the processor. That is one. Then we will try to see how you can quantify the performance of memory. There's something called as byte ordering conventions, right? So we'll see that. And then we will go into a lot of discussion on how to physically build memory. So there are two popular choices for that. One are called as static RAMs, the other are called as dynamic RAMs. All right. So we will try to see how you can build a single celled memory. Then we will try to see bigger memories, which are called as memory chips. You can assemble many chips to build what are called as memory boards. And then you can use one or more boards to build what are called as modules. And finally, you can combine one or more modules to realize main memory, right? Which we informally called as the main memory. So this is about the physical building of memory. And then we will realize that if you look at a computer doesn't really look at memory as one level, but it actually looks at it as a hierarchy. So we will see what is the hierarchy design problem. So how you can simulate memory as a hierarchy. And when the moment you talk of hierarchy, there is an element called as a cache, right, or a cache, which is there in as a part of the hierarchy. So we'll try to see various ways to design the cache. So I think this is all about. So this is like an overview of memory, right? And should take around 8 to 10 lectures. Can take more or less depending on what we do, right? So we let us begin the discussion. Okay, so what I will do is I want to visualize. I want to visualize memory as storing words, right? Right. So, so this is one thing I want to emphasize. I want you to visualize memory as storing words. I hope most of you understand that memory is storing bits of information, right? But we rarely look at memory as storing bits, in the sense that you cannot really address individually each bit. So generally you address bytes, but there are bigger sized. So this word can be thought of as a multiple of a byte. Right? You can think of this as a multiple of a byte. Right? So it is also possible to store words, and I will tell you what I mean by that. Right? So you please try to visualize this. And then what is the problem or what is the question? The question is, how is CPU connected to memory? Well, why the question is, why are we trying to ask this question? Because we really don't know what is memory and so on. Well, the idea is not really go into the details of CPU or memory, but it will give us some idea about some concepts about how memory operates and what are the terms that we use and so on. Right? Okay, so let me draw the CPU one side. So let us say this is the CPU, right? And let us say this is memory. Yeah. So, okay. So what is this? This is CPU. This is memory. Right? And what will we assume? We will assume that the memory is storing words, right? So I assume this, right? So this could be the first one. This could be the second one, and so on till we can talk of the last one. Right? So, okay, this is it. And then what you have is you have two special registers called as MAR. Right? You have a special register inside the CPU called as MAR and another one which is called as MDR. Right? So this MAR stands for memory address register and this MDR stands for a memory data register. And then what you have is you have certain general purpose registers, right? So yeah, so you have some general purpose registers arranged in the form of a register file, right? So okay, so this is called as the register file. A register file is nothing but a collection of named registers, right? So these are named registers. Okay, so yeah, so that is all, right? So this so this could be thought of as R1, R2, R3, R4 till some Rn, right? So these registers are arranged in the form of register file. Now what happens is if you look at memory, so we are assuming memory is storing words, and this is S, right? S number of bits, right? So okay, so if you see, let me write it down here. So S is the number of bits, right? So S is bits in the smallest addressable unit of memory, or some people also call it as memory word size. Memory word size, which means the same thing, right? So what are we assuming? We are assuming that you have so what you are actually storing are words, right? So this could be the 0th word, this could be the first word, and so on. And if I look at each word is S bits wide, right? Each word is S bits wide. If I look at here, right? If I look at an individual register of the CPU, right? So I can talk of this W, and this W is called as the CPU word size. So what it essentially means is that the CPU crunches words. CPU crunches words which are W bits wide, right? So it can. So suppose this was 16, right? So I would say it's a 16-bit CPU. It handles 16 words, 16-bit words at a time. If I look at this MDR is also W bits wide, right? So it is the same as this. If I look at this MAR is M bits wide. Right? Now, what is happening? So whenever I want to access memory, right, I have to specify a location from where I have to get my data. this location, this address that I want to push to memory has to be loaded in the register called as MAR, right? So I actually load an M bit value in this MAR, which essentially translates that M will be the number of bits, this number of bits in the logical memory address, right? In the logical memory address. Yeah. So the question is, why do I say logical? Why have I introduced this term logical? Well, there is a reason for it. So this logical is the memory space as seen by the CPU, right? Which means that when I actually go to memory, I can actually have a different space. So there is something called as mapping of spaces, but we really don't worry about it. So the CPU sees some memory, and that memory is nothing but what is called as the logical. Yeah. So let me bring it up here. Yeah. So that is called as the logical address space, right? So what it means is that whenever I want to access memory, I will push an M bit value here. This M bit value travels over a bus, which is called as the address bus, right? So this travels on some lines, which is called as the address bus. So this address bus goes to memory, right? So I can say here you will have pins like A0 to AM-1, right? And this is M. Yeah, this is M, right? AM-1, right? So you will have something like this here. Whenever the memory gives you some data, or whenever you have to send some data to memory, you will always receive the data in MDR, right? Or whenever you want to push data to memory, so whenever you want to write, you will put the value here, and then that value will be written. This value travels over a bus which is B bits wide, and this is sometimes also called as the data bus, right? So this is sometimes also called as the data bus. Okay, so I can say this B is the data bus size, right? So again, this will correspond to external pins from D0 to B-1, right? B-1, yeah, right? And then you will realize that you need certain extra lines to communicate with memory. So depending on the exact memory. So for example, you can have a line which is called as read-write line, right? So you can tell whether a read operation is desired or a write operation is desired. Then this could, right? So ask memory for these lines collectively can be thought of as the control bus. Of course, this is a actual memories will have more, right? So okay, so this is main memory, right? This is main memory for you, right? So what we informally know as main memory. Okay, so yeah. So if I look at this memory and I want to figure out how many words are stored in memory, that will be decided by this address bus, right? So this, so if it is m bits wide, you have two raised to the power m words. So this last location will be 2 raised to the power m-1, right? So this will be 2 raised to the power right. Yeah. So if I want to talk of memory capacity, that can be written as 2 raised to the power m, right? 2 raised to the power m s sized sized words, or that can be written as 2 raised to the power m into s bits, because you know each word is s bits wide, right? So, and now I think you understand a couple of things. The first thing is that whenever you want to connect main memory to CPU, you will have this standardized interface, right? This will be a standard interface, right? So a standard interface which consists of 3 types of buses, and you have to connect them. You understand something called as the CPU word size, the memory word size, right? The memory word size means 2 things. Either in this particular case, it refers to the smallest addressable unit, which means what is the smallest unit of data you can address here, right? So so if s is 1 byte, you can address 1. If s is 2, you can address 2 bytes at a time, right? So you cannot address anything less than 2 bytes, and so on. Sometimes this memory word size also means that memory can be read or written in terms of in units in multiples of this. So either you can read 1 word or 2 words or 10 words at a time, and so on, right? And the smallest word that you can address is s. So this is what it means. You will see additionally here that the CPU word size and the memory word size are different from the data bus size. So in the most general case, all these 3 values can be different, which means that although I will try to write s bits at a time, but if this b is lesser, so just as an example, suppose if this s was 16 and this b was 8, so even though you want to read 16 bits, you will have to do 2 bus transfers, right? So that's a design trade-off. Now, with lesser number of lines, more number of cycles. So if you look at, so maybe let me write it down. Yeah. So if you look at data bus size, right? Um, if you look at data bus size, B can be less than or equal to S, and it is a trade-off between number of bus lines versus bus cycles. Bus cycles for transfer. Yeah. So this is the design trade-off, right? So if you use more number of bus lines, then you will probably require lesser number of bus cycles. If you use lesser number of bus lines, you will probably require more number of times to use the bus, or you will consume more number of bus cycles. So this is about it. If you see, there is one more confusion here. Many a times you might have heard of people talking about a 32-bit CPU or a 64-bit CPU and a 32-bit machine or a 64-bit machine. What they are actually referring to is this. So when I say a 32-bit machine, it means you can crunch 32-bit numbers at a time. If I say 64-bit machine, you refer to this. But many a times, people are also referring to this, the width of the address bus. So if somebody says a 32-bit architecture, he's actually referring to that you can address 2 raised to the power 32 locations. If somebody says a 64-bit architecture, you can address 2 raised to the power 64. So because there is no standardization, right, you have to, whenever somebody says a 32-bit architecture or a 64-bit architecture, you have to ask that person, right, whether you're referring to this or this, right? So that is another confusion that is usually there, right? Uh, is it fine? Is it fine? Right. So okay. So yeah, what did I want to talk of? Yeah, I want to talk of addressability also. Yeah. So if S equals 1, right? If S, no, I shouldn't say, sorry, I should say if S, okay, I shouldn't say S is equal to 1, if S is equal to 8, then 8 is byte addressable memory. Okay? If S is greater than 8, right? If S is greater than 8, right? Which will be a multiple of 8, right? Multiple of 8. Yes, it will be a multiple of 8. Then 8 is word addressable memory. Example, word addressable memory of size 4 bytes. Yeah. So, yeah. So I want to talk of one more thing, which is called as addressability of memory. So the question is, what is the smallest unit which you address on memory, right? So if S is 8, or this is, if S is 8, or I can also write it as 1 byte, which means the same thing, right? If S is equal to 8 or 1 byte, right? So it means that you can access, you can address every byte on the machine or on in memory, right? Similarly, if S is greater than 8, which will be a multiple of 8, 8 bits, right? 8 bits, then it is called as a word addressable memory. So for example, the memory, it is a word addressable memory of size 4 bytes, which means I can generate an address for the first 4 bytes. I can then generate an address for the next 4 bytes. But within those 4 bytes, probably I cannot generate addresses, right? So generally, we talk of addressability of memory. People use this term or misuse this term. They call it as addressability of machine also. So they say whether it's a byte addressable machine or a word addressable machine, what they are actually referring to is addressability of memory, right? So that is another word of caution. Okay, so that is one more thing to understand. The last thing is okay. So byte ordering within a word. Okay, so what is this? Uh, okay, so what is this? Okay, so assume a byte addressable machine, right? Assume a byte addressable machine and further assume W by S is greater, sorry, so I shouldn't say that. W by S equals N, which is greater than 1, right? So what does this mean? This means, so what does this imply? This implies CPU word size is greater than memory word size, right? Right. So this so this means W by S means is greater than 1, means that the CPU word size is greater than the memory word size. So then the question is, so what is the question? How is a multi-byte word stored in memory. So this is the question we are asking ourselves, right? So the question is, yeah. So what is the question we are asking ourselves? How is a multi-byte word stored in memory? Just to give you an example, suppose I say I have a CPU word, right? I have a CPU word. Example is, so say W is 4 bytes, right? So W is 4 bytes, right? So this S was 8 was bits, right? Yeah. Yeah. So suppose W is 4 bytes, right? And yeah, so if I look at this word, right, you will realize I can break it down into 1, 2, 3, 4 bytes because it is 4 bytes, right? This word is in 4 bytes, and where this bit is B0, right? So this would be B7, and like the last one would be B31, right? So you know that these are the bits, right? These are the bits, right? So you know this, right? Now, what is the question? If I, so what is the question? The question is that you know that machine is byte addressable, right? So the question that we are asking is, what is the question we are asking again? Let me draw a line here, right? So which byte goes to uh, which address in memory? And let us say this is called as B0, this is called as B1, this is called as B2, this is called as B3. Right? Just as an example. Right. So I have a CPU word. I can internally visualize the CPU word as being made up of 4 bytes, right? Called as B0, B1, B2, B3. And you know, this is bit 0, bit 7, bit 8, and so on till the last one would be bit 31. Right? Because you have totally 32 bytes. 8 into 4 is 32. Right? So the question is this. If I look at memory, in which address do I put what? So one of the schemes, one of the ways in which you can do that assignment is called as a little Indian assignment. Right? If it is a little Indian assignment, this would correspond to byte address 0, this would correspond to byte address 1, this would correspond to byte address 2, this would correspond to byte address 3. Or in other words, what it means is, yeah, I just wanted to draw a line here. Yeah. Or in other words, what it means is the lower order byte goes to a lower address, the higher order bytes go to a higher address, and so on. If an architecture does this, right, it is called as a little Indian assignment. It is called as a little Indian assignment. And to contrast, there is something called as a big Indian assignment also. So there's a big Indian assignment also where it would be the opposite, right? So this would be 0, 1, 2, 3. Or in other words, lower bytes go to a higher address and higher bytes would go to a lower address. An architecture would be either of these. So it will not be both. Yeah, right. So Pulkit says little Indian or big Indian. Very good, right? Yeah. So what we are saying is an architecture could be either of this, right? So if you take it, if you take for example the Intel processor, or you take Motorola or ARM or somebody else, like they would either be little Indian or they would be big Indian. And if it is little endian, this would always be the case. If it is big endian, this would always be the case. Now, the question is, so this is done, and so that is point number one. And the second thing is, it is automatically done by architecture. So an ISA level programmer need not worry about it. So what am I saying? I'm saying that if you look at how a multi-byte word gets stored in memory, this could be and you can take another example, right? So this is just an example with W is 4 and S is 1 byte, right? S is 1 byte, right? Yeah, right. So S is 1 byte. You can take other examples also, right? So okay, now the question is the architecture actually takes care of it, right? You don't have to worry about it. So then the question is, why study or worry about it, right? So then the obvious question is, then if the architecture actually does it automatically, right, why should you worry whether it's little endian, the architecture that you have actually built is little endian or big endian? Well, there are two reasons for it. The first reason is when using debuggers, right? So when you use debuggers, you actually look at memory. And let us say you had a word stored, but you were reading it the opposite way. You will not make sense out of it, right? Because debuggers would usually allow you to access individual bytes, right? So you can go to memory and access the 0th byte, the first byte, the second byte, the third byte. But you should be able to, you should be also knowing in which way you have to construct this to make a bigger word, right? So if you really don't know how the machine construct the word, then you are in a problem. So that is point number one. So when using debuggers, and the other thing is when doing transfers across systems. When I say systems, I mean machines. So suppose many a times, I think you might have heard of the protocol called as FTP, right? FTP, you can move data from one machine to another machine. So that's at the application level. But at the lower level, suppose if somebody says, can you copy some part of my memory from here to another machine, so that the other person makes sense out of it. But if these two sequences, also called as the collating sequences, right? They are sometimes also called as collating sequences, right? So if the collating sequences, which collating sequence means the byte ordering, right? So yeah, right. So if or probably I should not use this term. I will not use this, or maybe I will have to check it, right? Maybe I will check it and tell you. But the idea is, if you're moving a machine, if you're moving data from a little endian to a little endian, it will be all right. But if you're moving to a big endian machine, you will have to convert this data, right? So there are ISA level instructions, right? There are ISA level instructions to modify the endianness as well. So these instructions would probably be required. Yeah. So these instructions would probably be required when you are transferring data from one system to another system. Okay. So where are we? Yeah. So where we are, so we know a little bit about how the memory connects to the CPU and what is the word size and what is an endianness of a machine and so on, right? So now what are we worried about? Well, there are two broad types of memories. Broad types of memories for primary or main memory, right? So what we informally call as primary memory or main memory, right? There are two broad types of memories. One are called as RAM, which stands for, what does it stand for? Yeah. So if you look at these memories are generally both these memories are used to implement primary memory and main memory. Generally, RAM is something. So random access means that every part of the memory is equally accessible, right? Accessible in the same amount of time. Generally, this RAM is used to store both code and data. ROM will be usually used for data, right? So if I look at this is used for both code and data, right? Whereas this would usually be used for code, right? So because once you write the code doesn't modify, right? So depending on architectures, some architectures might have a ROM, architectures might not have a ROM. Say embedded machines have a ROM because you have a substantial code, and that code is not supposed to get modified. On your PCs, normal PCs, everything resides in the RAM, right? But you try to protect the area of code by some other mechanisms, right? So depending on this, so we will not really see about ROMs because it is more of a fabrication issue. So for us, most of the discussion will be on RAMs, right? So we will, because RAMs can hold on to everything, right? So they can hold on to code as well as data as well. If you look at memory, memory supports read operation and write operation. Right? So if you look at memory, memory generally supports these two operations. So you can do a read or you can do a write. And then there can be other operations which can be combinations. So you can do a block read, a block write, and then there are certain memories wherein you can do a refresh and so on. Right? So but if you ask, most of the time when you go to memory, you would be going to memory, either you would be doing a read operation or a write operation. Right? So these are the things. So one question is which sequence and timing of signals to follow, right? So that could be one question that you can ask, right? So in which sequence should you push the signals, and when should you push them, right? This could be one question you follow, and other question you can follow. Question ask is how to measure performance, right? So I want to figure out whether the reading is slow or the writing is fast, and so on, right? So we will try to answer both these questions, but maybe out of order, in the sense that we will try to answer this question later on. Why? Because this will be specific to the kind of memory that you have built, right? So whether it's a SRAM or a DRAM and so on, right? So this will be dependent on the kind of memory that we will. This question we will try to answer at a very superficial level, right? So at a very high level, right? So I can talk of something called as memory performance parameters. Right? I can talk of something called as memory access. Yeah. Right. So I will define certain things. See if you appreciate. Right. So I define something called as access time, or I will denote it as TA, right? So access time is time, right? So I can define time from request to availability, right, of a word. So yeah, and when I say a word, I mean a memory word, right? Okay, I don't need. Should I write it? Okay, let me write of a memory word. Yeah. So what am I saying? I am saying that I can define some. Say the CPU has requested for one memory word. So from the time it puts a request to the time that you get the word, right? And that is called as access time, right? There is something called as a cycle time also, right? Cycle time denoted as TC, right? This is time from start of read to the start of next. Okay. This is slightly difficult to understand. So what we are saying is, let us assume for this case that you want to do two reads, consecutive reads, right? So you want to do it one after the another. So once you push a request, then you will. But it so turns out that you cannot request or you cannot push another request or start another read immediately, but you have to wait for some time. So the time that elapses between two read initiations is called as TC. Generally, okay, so sorry, missed it. Right. Yeah. Generally, TC is greater than TA. Right. So TC is greater than TA. Yeah. So that is one thing. There is one more parameter. Let me define it as block size. Again, this block is a very, what should I say? It's a very misused term, right? It has been used many places. So you have to be really careful about which block somebody is asking, right? So block size is the number of words per block in case of a block read. So it so turns out that memory is usually, when you go to memory, you don't really go to memory to access one word, but you actually go to access a block. So a block consists of more than one word. Why do we do that? This is for performance reasons, because then you get the maximum performance out of memory, right? Okay. Yeah. So that is one. The other could be bandwidth. This is denoted as omega. This is, yeah. So this is word transmission rate of data bus, right? So this data bus, I'm referring to the CPU memory interface, right? So the maximum rate by which you can transfer, at the rate at which you can transfer words on the bus, and there is something called as latency, right? So let me call it as latency, right? So latency, let me denote it as T1, right? So what is this? This is time to access the first word in a sequence of words. So what are we saying? We are saying, okay, so this is slightly difficult to understand. So what this says is, suppose you go to memory to access 5 words or 10 words. So it so turns out that getting the first word takes a lot of time, but the other words come fairly quickly, right? So this is the access latency for the first word, right? So from the time you may put a request to the time you get the first word in a sequence of words, that is called as the access latency. And then I can define the final thing, which is okay, so I can define something called as block access time, or I will call it as TBL, right? Yeah. So what is this? Time to access uh, entire block, right? So essentially from the start to the time when you get the last word out, right? And this TBL can be written as T1 plus K by omega, right? This can be written as T1 plus K by omega. Okay, so you can just think about this. So why is it K by omega and why not K minus 1 by omega, right? So let's think about it, right? So yeah, okay. What is the time? Let me see. Okay, time is 3 o'clock. So what I will do is let's take a 10-minute break, right? So it's 3 o'clock. We'll meet at 3:10 again, right? And then we will continue with static ramps, right? So take a break. Yeah, I will explain about all that, right? Pawan. Let's take a break. Yeah. Okay. I want to move on to the first kind of RAMs, which are called as static RAMs, right? Before that, if we have a question from Pawan Nayak. So he says, can you explain about sequence and signals to follow? Well, that will be specific to static RAMs and dynamic RAMs. So when I talk about these static RAMs and dynamic RAMs, I will answer those questions. Okay. So what do I want to talk about in static RAMs? Well, I will first talk about a block diagram or a functional view of a cell, SRAM cell, right? Now, why do I want to talk about a functional view? Is because I really don't want to go into the implementation details, right? Because that would really confuse us initially, right? So initially we will assume that we have a cell, and then we will try to build bigger memories, right? So we will try to build a register which is a slightly bigger memory. Then we will try to build what are called as memory chips, right? We will try to build a register, we'll try to build chips. uh, During the course of this discussion, so during the course of this discussion we will also see something called as tree and matrix decoders, right? So these decoders, we will see how to design effective decoders, because we will see there's a problem with decoding. And then we will actually try to see or implement, we will try to see how to implement a cell, right? And once we know how to implement a SRAM cell, then we will try to answer that question of Pawan Nayak, right? So which sequence and which signals to follow, which are depicted through what are called as timing diagrams. So timing diagrams for read and write operations. So this is the brief outline. This is the brief outline of what we will see, right? So I want to, so let us start the discussion one by one. So I first want to give the conceptual view, conceptual or functional structure of a cell, right? So I want to give the conceptual. So what will we assume? We will assume that I can implement somehow a memory which stores one bit of information, and it is usually called as a D latch or delay latch or D latch popularly. And I will assume that I have added some additional circuitry. So I have an input at the top which will be called as a select input. So select, when I select, only then this cell will respond, otherwise the cell will not respond. And I will assume that I can push some data in, data to be stored here, and this pin will be called as a data in pin. Similarly, I can take data out, whatever is stored here, by a pin called as data out, right? And I have another pin which is called as a read write. So it's a multiplexed pin. The high state is for read, the low state is for write. right? So what I'm assuming is I have suppose this block available to me. I am not really concerned about how this block is implemented and which additional circuitry allows me these four things. So you realize that this has two inputs or other three inputs, right? One is the select, which enables this cell. One is a data input, which allows you to enter data. This stores one bit of information. Whatever is stored can come out, provided you assert this right line. So let us say this is available to us. So storing one bit of information is possible. So if we assume that, what I want to do is I want to implement or build a 4-bit register, right, as a one-dimensional, right, as a one-dimensional SRAM array of cells. Array of cells. It's very large. This is what I want to do. Yeah. So I want to build. So one cell is known, right? Suppose this is given to me, right? I want to build a bigger memory. And what is that bigger memory? I want to build a 4-bit register, right? So how do I do that? Well, idea is fairly simple. You take these fellows. So you take 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? Yeah. And you realize that you have inputs on the top. So I will not write them down, but I think you know that this is the select input, right? This is the select input. Then everybody has these two. You have these two, and so on, right? And then you have something here. This is the read-write input. Right? Okay, the idea is very simple. So you have a select for the entire this thing, for the entire register, and you have a read write. Well, you take this and you take this. Yeah. So you take this and put dot here. Let's indicate. So you have tied everybody's read write together, and put as well. Yeah. So you have tried everybody's select together. You have tied everybody's read write together. So this is easy to understand. This is not difficult to understand. What is difficult to understand is that if I look at data lines, right? So if you look at, if I look at data lines to this 4-bit register, you realize that because there is one input line, one output line, right, per latch. But what is my intention? My intention is, and those will be unidirectional lines. But suppose I want to build what are called as bidirectional lines, right? So I can actually have a circuitry which can do that for me, right? So, okay, how do I do that? Okay, I can take this down and I can take this down as well, right? I can take this down and yeah, so this should allow on a read, should be able to read this. Huh? So this will be high. I have this, this, this. And I can have something like this. Same that I have here. And so on. Right? Similarly for the other ones as well. And this is on a write. This should be enabled. So this should Just a minute. Yeah. So yeah. So on a read, you will have something coming down and so on. Right. Okay. So this will be D0. This would be D1, and then you would have D2, and then you will have something D3. Yeah. So what do you observe? You observe a couple of things. The first is converting to bidirectional lines, bidirectional data lines. So that is one thing that you see. So you observe a conversion to bidirectional lines, and you will see the use of what are called as tri-state buffers. Right. So you see the something called as tri-state buffers. Right. So tri-state buffers are something like, so for example, if you look at this tri-state buffer, right, this tri-state buffer is driven by the read write line. So when the read line is high, this buffer will be enabled, and whatever is there on this line will actually connect here. So you can actually read something. Similarly, if this line is low, then you invert this. So in that case, this buffer or this switch will close and this line will connect here. So whatever is being written here can be actually written onto the latch, right? So this is a very simple example of how you can build a bigger memory, right? So you can build a bigger memory, and one thing that you have observed is that you have been able to convert to bidirectional lines, right? So that we could see, right? So yeah. So let us see. You can fabricate which. Okay, maybe I will skip that. Right? You really don't fabricate a register as a chip. All right. Now what I want to do is I want to fabricate it. There are a couple of things to understand here. That this is an SRAM chip, right? And this will be fabricated on a die and hosted in a DIP package, right? So a die means a kind of a wafer, right? So you will fabricate it on a wafer. And this means that it has 64K addresses, right? And the word size is 1 bit, right? So the word size is 1 bit, and the memory capacity is 64K into 1, which is 64 kilobits. Right? So this you have to understand. So there are many different ways of saying the same thing. Right? I could have said that, can you build me a 64 kilobit memory? That is one way. But then if I would have just said this 64 kilobit, you really don't know what is the organization. When I say 64K cross 1, then you know about the organization. In the sense, how is memory organized? So, how many locations and or how many addresses, and you also know the word size. You know the word size is 1 bit. Okay, so then the question is, and you know that it will be fabricated on a die. So the big question is like this. Yeah. So the big question is like this. So you will have to use a two-dimensional array of cells. Right? You have, so this was a dimensional array of cells, but now probably you understand that you will have to use a two-dimensional array of cells because of implementation constraints. Right? So otherwise, no, it will be skewed. It's a bigger memory. It's not a 4-bit memory or an 8-bit memory. Right? And the other thing that you will realize is that it has to be, right, the aspect has to be as square as possible. So if you look at 64K, can you tell me how many cells should I have? So if I have a matrix, can you tell me how many cells should I have in a row and how many cells in a column? Can somebody help me with that? Okay, first question is, how many cells will be required to implement this memory? Right, so how many cells? Yeah, so Pulkit says 256 cross 256. Yeah, so I think you can do that. Yeah, so this is a 256 cross, and generally the first one will be rows, the second one will be columns, right? So I think the book follows some other convention, but this row and column, yeah, so 256 rows and 256 columns. Yes. So suppose if I ask you, can somebody guess how many address lines will this or address pins will this chip have? Can somebody guess? It will be log of 64K, right? Log of 64K. So that is 2 raised to power 10 into 2 raised to power 6. So that is 2 raised to power 16. So that becomes 16. Very good. So Pulkit and Darshan say all that, right? So what do? I take those address lines, right? How many of them? 8 of them. And I take it to what is called as a row decoder, right? I take it to something called as a row decoder. And what does the row decoder do? It takes this data on 8 lines and it will assert one of these 256 lines. What it means is, so this essentially, once you select a row, then the entire column, right? The entire column is selected, right? So the entire column is selected, and how many columns do you have? You have 256 such columns, right? So you can have one of those 256 columns here, and then what you can do is, so yeah, right. So what is happening is, so what is happening is, you have selected a particular row, right? So a particular row is selected. Once a row gets selected, all the columns of that row come down. Right? All the columns of that row come down. So you have 256 columns coming down, right? So you realize 256 rows. So you select one of the rows. This line will go as a select line, right? So so you will have the entire column, right? All the columns. So it's essentially 256 columns will come here. And what is my intention? My intention is to take out one of them, right? Because I know that when I push an address, I should get 1 bit as output, right? So this 1 bit is the output, right? So essentially, the question that I want to ask is, uh, Can somebody guess what should be instantly driven by two other inputs called as read write and something called as chip select? So I'll talk of what is chip select and so on. Can somebody guess what should be this box? What should be in this box? So what is happening is I push a part of the address. So essentially I put this even some lines of the address I what is my inputs coming down? Use a you have 256 inputs coming here, right? And you want to take one of the inputs to the output, right? Can you guess what should you have here? Yeah. So you should have a mux, right? I don't know whether you have done that mux thing in your. Is it fine, Pulkit? You don't need a decoder. You need a mux. Yeah. So can you tell me the size of the mux? Can somebody tell me the size of the mux? Size of the mux? Anybody? Can somebody tell me the size of the mux? Okay. So do you say 8 mux? What do you say? I mean, how do you specify a mux? How do you specify? Yeah. So it's not 8 cross. Yeah. So 8 cross 1. Is it 8 cross 1? What is the size of the mux? Okay. I don't know whether you know or not, but it will be called as a 256 to 1 mux. Is that fine? Yeah. Or 256 cross 1. Yeah, very good, very good, very good. Or 256 is to 8. Yes. So Meet and Akshat and Sahil, very good, very good. Right. So you call it as a 256 to 1 marks, right? Or 256 cross 1. And you will realize, so that is in the direction in which you are reading, but you will realize you will require sometimes to write also. So in that case, you will require a 1 to 256 demux, right? So you have both here. So you have a mux or a demux here. And depending on this read write, you will be either using the mux or the demux. This chip select is a kind of a global input, right? So this will inhibit the working of this entire cell, entire chip. So only when the CS bar is asserted, only then the chip responds. Otherwise, the chip does not respond, right? So these are address lines. This is your data line, data pin, right? And these are two additional inputs. So I think that is all right, right? So you require a mux, a demux, a row decoder. Row decoder is for selecting the row. So this goes as the select input, right? This goes as the select input, right? This goes as the select input, right? Okay. So, okay, one of the things that you have to do here. So, what are the things you should worry about, right? You have to worry about the cell array size, right? You have to worry about the cell array size, and you have to worry about the number of pins for the chip. So, can somebody guess what is the number of pins for the chip? Can somebody tell me how many pins will this chip require? Anybody? Nitin says 16. Somebody wants to differ. So you require How many? 19. Okay. Okay, I see Pulkit and Sahil say 19. Do we have different answers? So 16 are required for address, 1 for data, 2 for read write and chip select, and you require 2 for VCC and ground. Huh? So that is 16 plus 1, 17, 17 plus 2, 19, 19 plus 2, 21. So this is 21, right? This is assuming bidirectional lines, data lines, right? So yeah, okay. So this is 21 assuming bidirectional data lines. Had it been the assumption being unidirectional data lines, then how much? Can somebody guess? Yeah. So one more, right? Yeah. So this would be this would be 2 for data. Any questions here? I can take it. Any questions here? I can take it. Otherwise, I'll move on. Okay, so if you understand that, yeah. So let us try to build another memory. I want to build or design a 16K cross 4 SRAM chip. And this looks like the same. Okay, sir, what is VCC and ground? uh, have you done a course on analog electronics or analog circuits? Yeah, I don't know whether it is there for you or not, but those are sub power supply lines. So VCC is the positive voltage, ground stands for right. So every IC, for that matter, requires power to operate on, right? So those are power lines. Very good. So Sahil has put it correctly. Yeah, those are power lines. Very good. Yeah, I hope that is answered, Sridhar. Yeah. Okay, very good. So if you observe very closely, the capacity of this memory and the capacity of the earlier memory is same. So both are 64 kilobit memories, right? So suppose somebody says, can you design a 16K cross 4 memory? So can somebody help me here? What is the change that you feel should be there, or should it be the same? So this means that this memory has 16K locations, and each location contains a 4-bit word, right? So the word size is 4, the number of addresses are 16K. Okay, so yeah, very good. So more data lines, which means you need 4 data lines, assuming bidirectional lines, and 8 lines otherwise, and the number of address lines would be less. Very good. What about the cell array? Can somebody help me? So here the critical part, here the crucial thing is choice of cell array. Can somebody guess what should be the cell array size? Anybody? So it should be 64 cross 256 or 128 cross 128. See, will 128 cross 128 do the trick? You will realize that the total number of cells would be the same as the previous case. Can you appreciate that, Pulkit? Yes or no? Yeah. So then what is your take? What is your take? Anybody? Otherwise, can give you the hint or maybe the answer itself. Okay. Maybe it is not so obvious. So implement as what is called as a 2.5 dimensional array. Right. So you have to implement as a 2.5 dimensional array. So what you do here is you do something like this. So this is the array. What you actually have here is here you have 4 smaller arrays, right? 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? You have 4 smaller arrays, and okay, so how do you have it? You can have it as 4 arrays of 256 cross 64. So what we are actually having is this array has 256 rows, 64 columns, 256 rows, 64 columns, and 4 of them, right? 4 of them, right? So you have something like this. Now things are fairly simple, right? So because it is 256 rows, you will have 256 line going in the select as a 256 select lines, and you have a row decoder, right? Right. So this is a right. This is a 8 to 256 decoder. This has 8 lines, and then you have A0 to A7. So the lower order lines would drive this, right? The lower order lines would drive this. Once you select a particular row, right, you have 64 lines coming out from each of the sub arrays, right? So you have 4 sub arrays. So essentially what happens is you have 64 line coming out from each of the sub array, right? So this is 64, this is 64, and you have one more, right? You have 64 lines coming out of it, right? And you realize that your intention is to pick up one from this, one from this, one from this, and one from this. So can somebody tell me what should I have here? Which unit should I have here? So my intention is to pick one from each group, and you will have additionally retry and chip select. Can somebody guess what should I have here? My intention is to pick one bit from here, one bit from here, one bit from here. So essentially what I want on the output side is 4 lines, right? So this would be D3 to 0. So D0 to D3, 4 lines. Can somebody guess what should I have in this box? Yes, very good, very good, very good. So I should have 4 64 to 1 mux, and I should have 4 1 to 64 demux, and the number of control lines. How many control lines will this have? Mux or demux have? How many control lines? Select lines? 6. Good. So the number of select lines is 6. So this becomes A8 to A30, right? Yeah. Okay, why did I choose this aspect? This aspect was chosen because the guiding principle is you want to keep this as squarish as possible, right? So no, this ensures as much squareness. Okay, Number of pins. Can somebody help me? Number of pins for chip. How many? Okay. How do you do that? So that is 14, right? 14 plus 4 plus 2 plus 2, right? 13. So that is 22. And I would encourage people to, whenever they write 22, they should always write assuming bidirectional lines, right? This is assuming bidirectional data lines. Yeah. Okay. Uh, are you aware? Does anybody know what is fan-in? Anybody knows what's a fan-in circuit? Have you heard of this term, fan-in? Yeah, the number of inputs to what? Okay, let me say, okay, let me ask a simpler question. What is fan in of a gate? Right, this is simpler, right? A logic gate. Now it is simpler, right? Yeah. So I think somebody had that answer. So the number of inputs that are there for a particular gate, that is known as the fan-in of a gate, right? That is known as the fan-in of a gate. And the fan-in of a circuit is the maximum number of inputs to a gate in the entire circuit, right? So these two things are slightly related, right? So if I give you a logic gate, you can find the number of inputs. So for example, if you have a 3-input AND gate, the fan-in is 3. If you have a 10-input AND gate, the fan-in is 10, right? And suppose you have a circuit and then you try to you go to every gate and figure out what is the fan-in. So this is the maximum fan-in of any gate, right? Maximum fan-in of any gate in the circuit, right? Okay. So I think this is known to everybody. Okay, let me ask this question. Can you build a 2 to 4 decoder? Can you build a 2 to 4 decoder? If I ask you this question, and then if you can build it, then a related question is, what is the fan in of this circuit? Can somebody help me with this question? So this is one question. This is another question. Third question. Yeah, I have 4 questions. Okay, so can I see some? I don't want you to build one, right? I just want yes or no. So I don't want expect you to build a decoder. I just want a yes or a no. Can you build or not? Yes or no? By the way, have you read decoders in your digital circuits? Am I audible? I don't know. Okay, I am audible, right? So have you studied decoders in your digital circuits or not? Yes, you have studied, right? Okay. Yeah. So suppose I ask you, I don't want you to build one. Suppose I ask this question, can you build a 2 to 4 decoder? Can I see a yes or a no? Okay, I think somebody should unmute himself and tell me. Maybe the CR. Can you unmute CR?
Yes, sir.
Uh, so why is everybody so silent? Is it like too much? Is everybody getting bored or something like that?
It could be, sir, because it's almost time.
Okay, okay. ठीक है ना? So maybe I will stop, right? Maybe I'll stop. Can I stop, CR?
Yes, sir.